most of the studies can be linked to studying the impact of new public management, कि how public management has worked, influencing comparative studies and comparative developments. Like most of the studies can be linked to studying the impact of new public management, कि how public management has worked. That the studies were also just conducted in few countries, and that also you have adopted more of Western tools and techniques. You find it empirical method, that you can say, general system, Max Weber bureaucracy. So whatever the tools and techniques you adopt to study, they are still Western centric, or more elitist, means they are more theoretical in nature. So because of that, it can be criticized. So this is how we can say. More exogenetic change, exogenated the process of diffraction, the more formalistic heterogeneous is prismatic phase. The more endogenetic, the less the formalistic heterogeneous, examine the hypothesis. It is a straightforward question. Yes. It says that how exogenetic, these are prismatic characteristics. We have already told that if it is exogenetic, how it is prismatic. If it is endogenetic, how it is diffracted. This you have to write, and why it happens, that you have to write. You have to examine it. That's this. So then you can tell that there will be, but there cannot be such a watertight saying. Yes, we cannot say that if there is endogenetic, that there will not be prismatic nature, and in case if there is exogenetic, so there cannot be diffracted. Right. Prismatic is, let's say, all society can be prismatic. It is just a matter of, let's say, that kind rather than nature. Let's say that it is just a matter of degree rather than kind. All societies will be considered prismatic. Yesterday we told you that there is no absolute prismatic, absolute diffracted. So no society is absolutely diffracted, no society is absolutely prismatic. So even if there can be endogenous change, still the society can be heterogeneous. And even if there is a, let's say that exogenous change, still society can be homogeneous. This a small society, let's say that, a society which is less external change comes, but society can be more homogeneous. Let's say Nepalese society, let's say that, you can talk about even, you can say this Bangladesh, etc. They may not be highly heterogeneous. All are Bengalis, you know that. Yes. But in Indian society, it is highly diverse, let's say. Even if, let's say, you can have one religion, Hinduism, but within Hinduism, you have, let's say, such a high level of diversity. So, this is what we can say examine part. Examine part means simply you have to argue after answering that even endogenous society can also have some prismatic characteristics, and prismatic society can have diffracted. That is what. All societies are prismatic. It is matter of degree rather than kind. When we say degree, yes, kind. So degree is that you can have, let's say, 20% prismatic, they can have 10% prismatic, or you can have 50% prismatic, they can have 20% prismatic, but there is prismatic. Degree, so what is the percentage? This rather than two different society altogether. This kind is means something type, let's say this. They are not two different types society, rather they can be the same society but with certain level of prismatic aspect. This. I think it in modern context, I say question hoga, there is a, let's say, typing aspect it can be. In modern context, Riggsian terms have not altogether disappeared, but have emerged in different forms with newer meanings. What can be different forms with newer meaning? Yes.
जैसे differentiation है, specialization का concept of classification that can be related. Then universally which reflects rationality in decision making. So Simon or Max Weber rationality. And heterogeneity means parallel something. इसकी एग्जांपल ये दे सकते हैं जैसे रेड टेपिज्म या रेड टेपिज्म डिक्रीज कर रहा है इन अवर कंट्री, मतलब कोशिश कर रहे हैं, लेकिन साथ ही साथ हम रेगुलेटर्स बढ़ाते जा रहे हैं.
No, Riggsian terms have not altogether disappeared. So what were the terms? Riggsian terms have emerged in different forms with newer meanings. Can you give any one term, let's say that it is relevant and with a different meaning, newer meaning?
Specialization, differentiation.
Yes. So what is new meaning? Institutional pluralism.
Yes, sir. On the diffracted society one term.
Institutional pluralism. Any other? What Niti Aayog? Any other?
So cell accuracy, bureau shifting, budget maximization, imbalance quality.
Can we consider? Let's. Yes. Let's key. We had also integration, but we talk more today of collaboration. Collaboration, let's say, the term we use is also coordination, collaboration, like this. We also talk integration like whole of the government approach. This, that is how you'll write that there are newer meanings. Although you will tell that at the same time, so you discuss, let's say, that it does not mean that they have been completely changed. Whatever the meanings that he gave, those meanings also remain, let's say, still relevant, which explain how the ecology has its influence on administration. This, but writing this much is enough. This you can say. Formalism भी लिख सकते हैं कि how formalism was given a positive term rather than a negative term. This Walson, let's say, yesterday we told about. This, so that way we can talk on this. Right? No, in practice you can write, 1-2 practice you can write coordination, collaboration. This you can say this. Whole of the government approach.
सर जैसे इन प्रैक्टिस में जैसे ट्रांजिशन इंटरमीडिएट स्टेट के बारे में उसने बात की, तो मतलब जैसे स्टेट और मार्केट के बीच में मतलब एक फिर वो आ गया ट्रांजिशन स्टेज आ गई कॉर्पोरेट वेलफेयर स्टेट, तो उस चीज़ को किस तरीके से समझ रहे हैं
उस चीज़ को
मतलब जैसे ट्रांजिशन इंटरमीडिएट स्टेट में उसने ये मेंशन किया था कि विद कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ बोथ, तो जैसे मार्केट स्टेट डिबेट में पहले मार्केट स्टेट डोमिनेंस मार्केट डोमिनेंस फिर उनकी
नो नो उसमें नहीं जाना है, वो तो ही रिजेक्टेड हिज एग्रेरिया इंडस्ट्रियल मॉडल, he rejected his agrarian industrial model.
talked about transition
The
state.
Transnistria was his review of agrarian industry, but that also rejected. It is not needed to talk that way. You want to link with corporate welfare state, combination of both.
Sir, prismatic society is also intermediary state,
Yes,
transition state.
yes, but we don't have to link that way. It is not needed. Right. This, it is enough. This much writing enough. 1, 2 with 1, 2 examples. Right. Approach to the study of administration in its environmental context is especially more useful for developing countries. Right? How it is more useful?
So, क्योंकि human activity has social, political, economical, cultural aspects, so bureaucracy is influenced by these sub-practices.
First we'll write about ecology of administration. Then you will write that key developed countries. The developed countries were already studied, part of public administration. All developments were largely in Western society. When they were in the context of Western societies, there no need to study Western society. Like all those theories, even let's say Hodden experiment. The Hodden experiment you have carried out in Western society. So this point also you will have to write. Already there were studies in Western society. In fact, entire development of public administration from Wilson time to Simon time all happen in Western countries. So what we need to further study them? So we know about Western countries, about organization, society, administration, we know them. Knowledge was lacking about developing countries because no studies, let's say, happen in developing countries. And developing countries were more transitional type, their ecology was different. Therefore, it makes sense to study developing countries from ecological perspective. This. And that's why comparative public administration has become relevant. That's why CPA has become relevant and it still remains relevant. Even after its decline, there is re-emergence, and re-emergence is also recognized CPA as one such field of public administration by Middlebrook Conference 3rd. So that way it can be read.
This question अगर ऐसा हो सकता है कि हम किसी डेवलपिंग नेशन के एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के बारे में उसके एनवायरमेंटल कंटेक्स्ट के बारे में पढ़ेंगे तो कोई भी हम उसके जजमेंट पे जाने से पहले हमको ये देखना चाहिए कि उसकी पास्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन कैसे थी, जैसे कि इंडिया के कंटेक्स्ट में कॉलोनियल पास्ट है।
Yes.
तो बहुत सारे हमारे एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव फाइल्स में बहुत सारे फ्लॉज थे, तो rather हम उसको कंपेयर
Yes, that way or that angle also you can bring, add that ki largely developing countries has colonial past, the historical context, the colonial past which we have to teach, let's say historical context. So how colonial past, but now they are independent, they may not be suitable, many things may not be suitable to them. So knowing them will, let's say, bring them, let's say this bring to the focus, bring to the light that what are flaws, what are the problems, what you need to do, what you need to bring change as per present ecology. Yes, that angle also can be brought.
It can be related to development administration also.
Yes, it can be linked to development, historical context, which will teach you after this. That way also you can link. Comparative public administration started with no paradigm of its own and developed none. So what you will answer, by the way, in this simple question? Yes.
Criticisms and reasons of failure.
You will start writing about CPA. First you write about CPA, then you will write about how CPA development was a failure. This how it was a failure, that you will write that, and the failure was remarked as, let's say, not emerging as a paradigm. This plus when it started also, that was not a paradigm, means major development, simply because CPA had a long history. Woodrow Wilson is considered as founder. Even let's say before CPA emergence, there were CPA elements, the early elements in CPA. There were early elements in the theories or contributions of the thinkers like Taylor's Techno-White movement, Max Weber historical comparative analysis, Herbert Simon taking into consideration empirical method. So those things were part of, let's say, that. So that can be considered. This, however, is still saying that it ended with no paradigm will be very extreme criticism. CPA had also contribution. So those contribution wala part that we have told, you can write on this, and then you can conclude on the basis of its relevance, how it will remains relevant, right. Yes, administrative ideas must be seen in the context of environment in which they develop. In the light of the best to examine the influence of new public management and information in on comparative study of administration. Yes. This is the question which was asked. Basically, let's say that it is a question which is asking about old CPA and new CPA. Yes. But it is not directly saying old CPA and new CPA. This is how it is. So what it is saying, that administrative ideas must be seen in the context of environment in which they develop. The ecological aspect. You can start with ecological aspect, how administration is ecological oriented, or let's say administration has ecological orientation. That was highlighted by Ecology of Administration, means by Fred Riggs. And then you can draw that how bureaucracy is influenced by administrative system, political and economic and social system. And then you should try to link that that is how, since administration is ecology oriented, that's why there was comparative public administration movement started. And comparative public administration movement started during 1950s and 60s. So that there can be formulation of universal theory on the basis of analysis of administration in its ecology. This, and that old CPA or CPA resulted into development of some ideal models. However, it declined. Thereafter, again there was emergence of new CPA. During this new CPA era, this is how you will find that there was the developments were influenced by new public management and information and communication technology. These two factors became the most important factors during 80s and 90s, influencing public administration. Not only influencing public administration, but also influencing comparative studies and comparative developments. Like most of the studies can be linked to studying the impact of new public management, how public management has worked. This, and most of the studies can be linked to LPG, public management, ICT, you can say that. They themselves have given rise to, let's say, comparative analysis and studies, which are nothing but study on how those implementation, how the theories have worked in implementation. Yes. So that way, new CPA is more characterized by them, and old CPA was more about theoretical orientation. That's why new CPA we considered as something called implementation of theory, and old is considered formulation of theory. This, since administration is ecology oriented, therefore it should be analyzed in the context of its environment. So public administration during 50s, it was different. Public administration during 90s and this 80s and 90s, it was different. It was more influenced by these two developments that you can consider. And because of that, this is how comparative public administration remains relevant. And towards end, it is the same story in all questions almost. how CPA remains relevant, and Middlebrook Third Conference, even it recognizes the theme, the future subject matter of public administration as old public administration, traditional public administration, new public service and new public management. Yes.
Can we mention SAD and Washington consensus?
Yes, yes.
Can we mention SAD and Washington's consensus in reforming developing countries?
Yeah, but context is not being asked, rather it is in comparative perspective.
So that will enhance.
Yes, you can add it, can be mentioned, not a problem, right? But we don't have to focus more on context of emergence of new public management ICT, rather you have to talk more about comparison between what was CPA that time or what is CPA now. This, that aspect.
And ICT as a tool.
Yes, ICT is a tool, or let's say theoretical development you can consider. E-governance, this in that context. Next, failure to discard its holistic characteristic, West-centric orientation led to decline of comparative values. What can we consider holistic nature?
That means if Western.
Yes, holistic nature.
Western-centric administration was dominant. With the
Western-centric.
was Western.
Yes, any other? Elitist nature. What was elitist in that Western centric? चलो ठीक है, Western centric बताओ. What was Western centric?
In comparison, they try to impose the environment of developed countries in developing countries, which were
Like what environment? What they try to impose?
like their environment, ecological aspects.
Diffracted aspect can be considered. Right. Elitist nature is related to not capitalist. Let's see, Western centric means basically the thinkers were belong to the Western countries. This is what their idea was, ivory tower image. This is how building universal theory. The theoretical perspective, you can see this, that aspect. Because you give more emphasis on building a theory for academic relevance, the academic pursuit, that you can consider. Western centric is that still you consider diffracted society as ideal or Western society as ideal. And then you compare developing countries with Western centricness. That the studies were also just conducted in few countries, and that also you have adopted more of Western tools and techniques, you find it, empirical method, that you can say, general system, Max Weber bureaucracy. So whatever the tools and techniques you adopt to study, they are still Western centric, or more elitist means they are more theoretical nature. So because of that, it can be criticized. So this is how we can say this, and that can be considered as one, let's say, a major cause of decline. Because developing countries were not still being seen from developing countries' perspective, from their own ecological perspective. Rather, the Western, they are trying to compare, they see them from Western country perspective. This. When you want to see them from Western centric perspective, you find their ecology different, so that aspect, and only limited studies were conducted, and there was no progress made on that, means there was less progress made, or empirical approach they adopted, or behavioral approach they adopted. That become main cause of their decline, it is said. Because developing countries are highly heterogeneous, and their, let's say, ecological aspect is different. You need to understand them from their perspective. However, let's say other factors will also responsible for decline in terms of, let's say, that lack of consensus, you can say, or Cold War strategy, you can say, withdrawal of food funding, you can consider. Those factors, causes that we have told, that can be written. It is historical sociological factor, we will have to discuss after this, they will be able to answer that. Then Rigg's model of fused this society and administrative, this is how that system of has been this rational, charismatic, legal, restored authority. It is a comparison between Riggs and Max Weber. अब ये सिस्टम हैज़ बीन इंस्पायर्ड बाय, तो इससे आपको यू डोंट हैव टू पैनिक बाय दिस कि क्या उन्होंने इंस्पायर किया था, ऐसा एक क्वेश्चन लिखने का तरीका है बस. तो ऐसा नहीं था कि मैक्स वेबर ने एक फ़ोन करके बोला था रिग्स को राइट. तो देयर इज नो लिंक, राइट. इंस्पायर्ड इज दैट कि यू हैव टू राइट अहेड कि in CPA Riggsian model, Max Weber bureaucracy was also one major tool of comparison. This how Max Weber influenced. Then you write similarity, differences. That is how you have to write on this aspect. This so how it was inspired. Inspired that bureaucracy become basis for comparison in comparative public administration. In fact, his ideal models can be compared to Max Weber bureaucracy. This matching some characteristics, so similarity is this, differences are that. Still they are inseparable, the conclusion that we have written, that will be the answer of this, right. This, it is development dynamics question, this is how, you know, Riggs is also, in development administration also he is asked. We will take development dynamics when we will take on this. That is how, let's say, they ask 3 trends. Riggs observed 3 trends in comparative public administration. This, that is one question. Fred carefully change his theory. There are 2 questions basically in this. This is one question. So you can explain those 3 trends. Yes, simple. And Riggs continuously change his theory in order to create a perfect model. What you will answer on this? Yes, so he discarded his agraria industria. This then fused prismatic, diffracted. Then finally, let's say prismatic society, revisited model. That is how you have to write on this, right? So your focus will be more on prismatic society, revisited model, what he reviews, and then you have to take how it is perfect. It is about differentiation plus diffraction. Prismatic, it is more flexible. It is more flexible, that you can consider this. That is how. However, still he was criticized, a bit of criticism also, right? A bit of criticisms also will be written like this. Then you write relevance. So this is how largely. So largely will be able to answer the questions on CPA when whatever the question they ask. Yes, by the time your understanding will further improve, so you will be a better position to answer them.